Welcome to the Game Theory Podcast. I'm your host, Sam Vecenie. Today, Bryce Simon joins me, and we're going to dive deep into the Giannis Antetokounmpo trade market. Everything you need to know about who the potential suitors are, what the market could look like, everything and more. We're going to talk about it from the Bucks perspective, from all of the teams' perspective, and from a league-wide perspective. But first, let's hit the music.
They do have a timeout. Decide not to use it. Way downtown.
Bang! Bang! What is this going to be? Wow! Are you kidding me?
Hello and welcome to the Game Theory Podcast. I'm your host, Sam Vecenie. But if you watch the tape, what you will see completely orchestrated this game. Bryce, what's going on, buddy?
What's up, Sam? How are you? For anybody who is upset at us for not getting this out earlier, that is my fault. Sam brought up the idea of recording this on Wednesday, and I politely said, Sam, I made a 24-hour trip to the Denver Nuggets Detroit Pistons game between Tuesday and Wednesday, and I was truly running on fumes. And I think you would agree to this. I very rarely play that card. But I played that card last night because I was just like, I'm not going to have the energy to do the Giannis thing right now.
Yeah. I mean, look, it's your fault that Aaron Gordon is injured. We can all admit that. It's you're to blame that he injured the right hamstring. We breathed
the same air and somehow I injured his hamstring. I think he did walk right by me in the hallway after the game. I promise I kept 3-4 feet of distance. He had his family, so he was joking around with them and stuff. But that is cool, Sam, seeing those guys coming out of the locker room after the games and stuff like that. And just some of those, you see who some of the players, like I'll just shout this out. Isaiah Stewart is like the nicest dude ever, Sam. I was standing
It's so funny, isn't it? People have such a wrong impression of him. When I talked to him before the draft, like 2 or 3 times, he is so nice. If you get his competitive juices flowing, like I remember I asked him about because they played zone at Syracuse when he played for Hop, right? Played 2-3 zone the entire Washington. I'm sorry. Hop was at Syracuse before that. So it was the same zone. But every time, or whenever I asked him about it, he'd get a little bit mad. Like you could see, he'd be like, I guarded man to man my whole life, man. Like I got this. He was right. You know what I mean? Like he's got it. But so genuinely the nicest person anytime I've talked to him.
He finishes his warm up and listen, he doesn't, I don't know Isaiah Stewart. I don't know the players. I'm not part of whatever, but he recognizes me from just being around from time to time. And he will come over and dap me up and just say what's up, hello, what, but that's not even the best part of the story. I'm standing in the hallway after the game. He walks out of the locker room and Sam, God's honest truth. He told every single Nuggets worker, every single person in that hallway, have a good night, whatever, every single one. And he's on the road. This isn't LCA where it's all the workers. He sees these people one time a year. They are just any random people. And he makes and I'm not saying he's the only one. I'm not saying there aren't other great dudes. There absolutely are. Cade did some really cool stuff with some of the young fans and all of that. But it's just I always pointed out with Stu because of the LeBron James blood on his face, the Drew Eubanks thing, all of that. I'm not trying to change the perception of Isaiah Stewart. It is always a reminder whenever I do get to go watch a game live. And that's just a really good example of who a lot of these guys are, even off the court.
Here's the thing, most NBA players that I've met, really good dudes.
Yes.
Truly, just good human beings is the reality. You have to be fairly well adjusted to be able to deal with the grind and the rigors of the NBA. There are exceptions to that, to be sure. We're not going to go into that necessarily.
Every profession, Sam. I'm sure if we met every podcaster in our business, there's some that are straight up jerks. And I would say the majority that I've met are really good men and women, because there are great women podcasters as well. But I'm sure you can find 5% that just aren't necessarily the greatest people.
That's right. Yeah, look, I couldn't have recorded anyway by the end of it because I went to try and go hit golf balls for the second time after my back injury that I had. And it went well. I, played on the simulator and played a full round and shot 78. Like, it was good. But my back was like, I was so sore after it. I was just like, I can't. We got to take a
different activity. Seems like there's a different activity should be prioritized coming off this back injury, Sam. Golf. I don't golf, but it seems like that is rather stressful on your back.
It is, and yet I'm obsessed. And as person with ADHD, I get fixated on these things. And like, I've gone from like in the last 2 years from being like someone in the hundreds to have picked up a golf club one time before that in the last, what would that be? Like 6 weeks, and shot a 78 yesterday, like on a simulator. So like getting pretty good at it.
You're addicted. I've heard it's addictive.
Have that thing. So, frustrating to say the least. Okay, let's talk about Giannis. We're 6.5 minutes into the show and people are probably losing their minds. So, Shams yesterday comes out with this report basically saying that, I want to get the exact terminology here to get it right, but says two-time MVP Giannis Antetokounmpo is ready for a new home at the February 5th NBA trade deadline or in the offseason as several rival teams make aggressive offers to the Milwaukee Bucks for him, and the franchise is starting to listen, league sources tell ESPN. Here's the thing about that report. It literally could have been the Bucks are starting to listen to trade offers for Giannis Antetokounmpo, league sources tell ESPN, and that would have been the report. That's all it is. Like, that's where this has been the whole time. The Bucks have not really been willing to listen up until this point. Now they are more open and willing to listen. That's the reality of the report. And like, I can tell you that because I've spent the last 2 days on the phone with people trying to figure this out. And Sam Amick over at The Athletic, my colleague, basically reported the same thing. So I want to kind of run through a few different things here while we're talking about this. I want to talk about the Bucks' perspective here. I want to talk about Portland's kind of role in this because I think Portland's role is really important because they have all of Milwaukee's picks from 2028 until 2030, the 2029 pick being a pick swap. And we'll talk about the 4 teams that I think are most likely. It's the 4 teams that have been reported. It's the Knicks, Timberwolves, Heat, and Warriors. But I want to start with the Bucks. I want to start with their perspective here because I think it's important. So with Milwaukee, the important thing to try to figure out here is what do you need and what is the timing of this deal? Do you get the best offer now because the team that acquires Giannis will theoretically, given the timeline on his calf injury, but not certainly, theoretically, get him for 2 playoff runs and thus may be more willing to offer more in order to get that and thus impede the potential interference from Giannis and his representation saying, oh yeah, like, we'll only sign here, here, or there. Like, if you get Giannis for 2 playoff runs, you might just be willing to throw caution to the wind and say, hey, we'll try and convince him to stay, is the reality. We have a year to try and convince him to stay. If you get him for 1, I think that's a little bit less likely. The second piece of it with that is, do you think that if he hits the trade market this summer, if you keep him the rest of the way, A, do you believe that you can stop him from playing the rest of the year? Which is important in regard to like their potential draft pick. They own a draft pick this year. that will either be theirs or the New Orleans Pelicans, depending on how the lottery shakes out. The New Orleans Pelicans are, if not the worst team in the NBA, certainly among the worst teams in the NBA. They've been better recently, but not that good. The Bucks are gearing toward being quite poor the rest of the way.
The Bucks are one of the worst teams in the NBA without Giannis Antetokounmpo on the court.
I think that's right. So, given all of those factors, does it make more sense to move him now versus later if you feel like he can't, like he just won't sit the rest of the way? And we'll make us think about it. And because he's subject to the player participation policy, that could cause problems for Milwaukee too. Do you think that the offers will be the same in the summer? Do you think that if he says the Warriors may not be a team I want to go to or something like that? I'm not being specific here. If he says, I don't want to go to Minnesota, I don't want to go to Golden State, I want to stay on the East Coast, maybe. I don't want to go to Atlanta or something like that. Does that mean that you don't have an offer from the Warriors or from Minnesota or from Atlanta or something like that you can use in your back pocket in order to make the other offers rise, right? Or because you have potential offers now, can you make the other teams get creative? And this would be actually the biggest time for the bidding war, because Giannis might be able to go to them more aggressively in the summer and say, I'm not signing here, I'm not signing there. Minnesota and Golden State decide not to get involved in the summer versus now. And then you're left with teams that are making less aggressive offers like Miami and New York. I'm not saying that's accurate. I'm just trying to lay out what Milwaukee is considering right now and what their process will be for undertaking a Giannis trade, right?
And I think the other things I would add into this is the injury, the aforementioned injury, because when you think you can get a healthy Giannis this season is a huge factor in this to me, Sam, because I already mentioned this when we talked the Golden State thing. If you don't think he's going to be back and healthy this year, that changes how much I'm willing to give up, especially for a Warriors team who needs to maximize every year they can of their aging star and core players, including Draymond Green with Steph Curry there. The other factor to what you're talking about in the offseason, teams will have access to more draft picks and they will know where their 2026 picks land, which is another factor, because if I'm trading for another 2026 pick, again, I brought this up whenever I was talking about being a Bucks fan and being okay with this move. If I'm trading Giannis to Atlanta and all of a sudden I have pick 1 from Atlanta and pick 4 of our own, I'm okay with where we're at in the rebuild, right? So those are just a couple other factors. I'm not saying that they should wait till the offseason. I'm just saying I think those things are important to consider as well. And then I did not know this. I was listening to the Big Number today, so shout out them, that if he gets traded in the offseason, or once he gets traded, he has to wait 6 months to sign that mega extension, which if he gets traded at the deadline can still be that October date that we talked about last episode. If he waits till the offseason, that October date is no longer in play. And while the other team is still going to give him that offer, things could theoretically change, Sam. Like you would play a portion of a season with the potential for some sort of injury that could change the calculation. I know that's a lot of ifs and whatever, but I don't think it's irrational to consider it.
It's not. And that's the other piece of this for Milwaukee too. Do you decide to play like a game of chicken here with Giannis, where you go, okay, we're going to look to move you or whatever. We're going to listen to offers. Go back to Giannis and say, none of the offers are good right now. We don't really feel like this is great. Do you make him go until October and present him with that 4-year, $275 million offer and basically say to him, turn it down. Go ahead. Turn it down. Right? Are you really going to turn down 275? Is that something you're going to do? And see if he signs it. That's like another possible, like that's the other thing that they can play in negotiations with teams. The issue for me with that is I'm open to that as an idea. And I think there are worlds where you can do this. Again, say that they're able to like do a Ja Morant deal involving like Kyle Kuzma, Bobby Portis, and it'd probably have to be Rollins, but like if you're making them take back Kyle Kuzma, it would probably have to be Rollins in the deal is the problem. And they don't have like the expiring money to be able to send back. Say that that's it, right? You then have, I believe, 2 first-round picks that you can trade on top of having your pick this year. So essentially, you'd be treating this year as a gap year, which is something they threw at Giannis previously, and he seemed not excited about, according to reporting. Do you decide, okay, we now have Ja Morant, the 7th overall pick. Let's call him Keaton Wagler. Let's call him, Kingston Flemings at 5 or whatever pick you end up with, right? We have those 2 in the backcourt. We have Miles Turner. We have Giannis. We have some salary flexibility moving forward to go get another guy. We have 2 picks that we can trade, 2023 or 2031 first round pick, 2023 first round pick. We can go out and get other guys now to surround you with. Put your money where your mouth is. Don't sign the deal when we think we can present you with like a fairly competitive situation. I don't think that's a terrible play, if I'm being honest, from Milwaukee's perspective. The issue is that I think that this is kind of turning right now. It does feel like it's probably going to be harder to keep him based off of the media pressure. I have said before that I wouldn't really care that much. The real thing is like they just made a catastrophic coaching hire here. Like Doc Rivers, I thought Doc Rivers was doing pretty okay to start the year. It was terrible. It was an unconscionably bad hire. It made no sense to make the hire at the time. I thought it was fine to fire Griffin. If you thought that Griffin was the wrong guy, that's fine. Like if you think it's the wrong guy, it's cool. But don't bring that guy in. We know what Doc is. Like we know that Doc's not a great coach at this point in the modern NBA. Go hire somebody different. Go hire a modern mind. Put in an interim for the rest of the year if you feel like Griffin is not right. And then go get a great coach. Like they just rushed the whole process. It felt like to go bring in Doc because he's a Marquette guy and like, he's probably got relationships in the area with powerful brokers and with the organization and everything. Like it didn't make sense at the time. And that's probably the decision that most caused the problem here. And the Lillard injury and obviously the Lillard trade didn't quite work out in the way that they wanted and everything like that. But I do think there is a fairly reasonable case for the Bucks to basically call Giannis's bluff here and go, okay, don't sign the $275 million deal that we're going to present to you, especially when we think we can present you with certain players that are probably pretty interesting moving forward, on top of having your spacing center for the long term and Miles Turner, which a lot of teams just don't have, as we'll talk about today, in all honesty, on top of going out and getting guys in the offseason, including a very high draft pick.
So I'm not saying you believe this, but you're saying there is a world where Milwaukee could still talk themselves into, we can build one more contender around Giannis. We could try this one more time. I
think that I'm not necessarily talking myself into that. I would bet you that that's what they're trying to talk Giannis into. Like if I'm looking at it from the organization perspective and I'm looking at it from, we really like having Giannis on the team, that would be my case to Giannis.
I think there's a world. I think the draft pick changes everything. So I can understand if they game that out in terms of what they could potentially do. I guess I'm still just of the mindset that I wouldn't do it. Like, excuse me. To me, it's time. This, and I think I can listen to the arguments that you brought up on, this deadline, this offseason. If you don't get the offers at the deadline that you think you should be getting for Giannis, I understand dragging it out and maybe you get to this point, but I feel like they should go ahead and start the rebuild. I feel like that's where they're at. Should be at, not where they're at. I have no idea where they're at. But it is interesting that I feel like we've talked ourselves into a little bit of leverage that Milwaukee might have in this situation in terms of holding on to him, the contracts, all of those things. I don't know if it's leverage is the right word, but maybe enough to make sure they get the return that they should get for who Giannis is as a player.
Before we get into the other teams, we're going to shout out Trade Coffee. Shout out to our good friends at Trade. Whether you're gearing up for back-to-back meetings, shuttling kids back and forth to activities, or tackling an endless to-do list, your morning sets the tone for it all. That's why it should start with the perfect cup of coffee crafted just for you. That's where Trade's going to come in. Trade is the #1 U.S. coffee destination, bringing you fresh coffee from over 50 of the country's top roasters. Trade's experts have taste tested thousands of coffees to curate over 450 amazing roasts. Whether you're new to coffee or you know your favorites, they will handpick the perfect coffee just for you, even cold brew when it becomes those hot summer days like it is here in Australia. It was 105 over the weekend, Bryce. It was 105 on Tuesday here, actually, Bryce. It was wild. Just take their quiz, and in under a minute, they'll match you with your perfect coffee. If that first bag isn't quite right, they will replace it for free until they nail it. Their prices are on par with grocery store brands, but the quality is just next level because you're getting coffee that is curated by Trade's experts. You're going to support local roasters as well. It's a win-win for everybody in the ecosystem. Right now, Trade is exclusively offering our listeners 50% off your 1-month trial at drinktrade.com/game. DRINKTRADE.com/game. GAME. That's drinktrade.com/game for 50% off your 1-month trial. Drinktrade.com/game. Okay. Before we get into the 4 teams that I think are reasonably in the mix here for Giannis, I do want to talk about Portland's role in this. I think a lot of people have brought up the idea of Portland being an interlocutor, particularly for the Knicks. I think in a deal is where a lot of people's minds go. We'll talk about why I wonder if that's like a little bit faulty. But the reason that Portland matters here is that Portland, via the Damian Lillard trade, owns Milwaukee's picks from 2028 until 2030. The 2029 is a pick swap. Obviously, that means that if Milwaukee wants to control its own draft board in a post-Giannis era, and thus control the ability to potentially tank and go get super high-level prospects, or maybe not tank, do whatever you want to do, getting your own picks back creates a lot more flexibility moving forward for them. Portland holds a lot of leverage here. And on top of it, I do also want to bring up like the Portland front office situation too, where Portland is a good team. Like I think they're a really, really solid basketball team that is currently sitting at 23-25. The Warriors are ahead of them, unless the Warriors trade for Giannis. Probably won't stay ahead of them, would be my read. Could very well get into the 8 and get the double elimination in the play-in tournament and end up in the play-in. Problem is the Clippers are right behind them and they are coming quickly. I would say the Clippers are probably a better team than the Blazers right now. but they should feel pretty good about getting into the play-in and being able to like continue to grow this thing at a pretty solid level. But there's new ownership there. Typically what happens with new ownership is that sometimes they want to bring in their own guys, right? To run the front office. It's a reality of a situation. And if Joe Cronin and that front office felt like they needed to do something in order to, you know, make it clear that they have real value and that they are good at this, this would probably be the deadline to do it, right? Portland has a bunch of picks. They do 0-1, I believe, but they have the extra Orlando pick they got in the Cedric Coward deal, and then they also have these 3 extra draft assets, 2 picks, 1 swap from Milwaukee. And these are seen as incredibly valuable league-wide.
Sam, real quick, isn't it the other way? Isn't it 1 pick and 2 swaps?
Is it 1 pick and 2 swaps? I thought it was 2 swap. I'll look it up.
So I'm looking at the NBA.com from that trade. 2029 first. I think you've just said it backwards. 2029 first, pick swaps in 28 and 30.
That is correct. You are right. I apologize. It is correct.
It's all the right years, just got the swaps and the actual picks a little bit backwards. But yes.
So
years.
With that being said, Portland is actually in like a real position of power here. They can decide to keep these picks if they want and just continue to short the Milwaukee Bucks, which doesn't seem like a bad idea. Or they can like wield this position of power right now and go get somebody that they really want league wide and say to that team, hey, you can go get Giannis now. Like you can go do this. And everyone's looked at it from the perspective of the Knicks, right? Because they could take Mikal Bridges, they could take Karl Towns. I think there are just better players that they can go get, is my problem. Like I think Karl Towns is a great player, but like on that contract with his effort recently, it's not awesome. Mikal Bridges like is a good player, but on that contract is a question to me. OG Anunoby would be great, and Anunoby's a stud. Like I'm all for that guy, but again, very expensive. The name I brought up was like, I would probably rather have Jaden McDaniels than any of those 3 guys, right? Like if you can get Minnesota to be like, hey, we'll flip you Jaden McDaniels for these 3 picks so that Minnesota can then go to Milwaukee and offer them all of their pick capital back. I would rather have Jaden McDaniels than Anunoby, because even though Anunoby is a better player, frankly, when he's healthy than what Jaden McDaniels is, Jaden McDaniels' contract is like drastically less expensive. I think he makes like $10 million less in the final year of this deal. And then on top of it, like Jaden McDaniels doesn't miss games. Like Jaden McDaniels has played at least 70 games every season since his sophomore year.
Real quick, it's 15 million now and almost 20 million difference by 28, 29. Jaden's doesn't even have a player option on 28, 29. OG's does, which I assume like at that OG probably will lock in at almost 50 million in 28, 29, but the contract is substantially different between those two.
Correct. And again, in a vacuum, I think OG Anunoby's a better player, but Jaden McDaniels is also 3 years younger and probably fits Portland's age timeline better. And I'm not saying that like go all in on Jaden McDaniels if I'm Portland. I'm just saying that if I'm Portland, I think what I'm saying here is just, I think Portland has better options than what the Knicks can present them. And if you're looking at this from Portland's perspective, your goal is not to be the interlocutor in a Giannis deal. Your goal is to get the best player that you can, right? You don't care what is going on with Giannis. You care about bettering your organization in the best way that you can. So to me, I'm finding it harder to believe the more that I logically think this out, that the Knicks are going to have a pathway here that is all that easy.
No, I mean, every
because
Knicks pathway.
If I'm Portland, I'm just looking at, because yeah, I think you're going to say every Knicks pathway has to be through Portland, basically.
Or somebody. Like, I'll be honest, like, I gamed out OG Anunoby to the Pistons today. Like, what would I give up? What would the Pistons give up to go get in OG Anunoby, either in a 3-team deal or just straight up, like, Detroit trades New York, this stuff. Now New York has this stuff to trade for Giannis. It's all the same idea, right? And so, yeah, like, for New York, it's not as simple as working with Milwaukee. New York has to go to somebody else. And to your point, like, not every team needs Portland, but there are other teams outside of even the Knicks that do need Portland to make this happen. So it is interesting. That would be a fun treat. Like, Denny, Tumani, and Jaden McDaniels on the wing is sick stuff.
It's really fun,
behind them.
Right? And clinging behind them. Yeah.
I also want, like, could you get Drew off your books to New York in this deal somehow as well? Like, if Giannis wants to play with Drew or whatever. I don't know how that would all work out, but I just, like, could you also get off bad money? Like, not bad money, but a contract of substantial size that Portland doesn't need.
Yes, exactly right. So Portland to me is like a key figure in all of this because look, again, I don't think it's a terrible idea just to short Milwaukee here moving forward.
Sure.
And being like, let's keep these picks. These could be awesome. But from a trade perspective, I don't think that Portland will ever have more leverage with these picks than what they do now, unless those picks turn into like top 3 picks, basically top 4 or 5 picks in the draft. And that's very possible, but you're really running a risk on some level by hoping and guessing that that's where those are going to be. So I just bring all of this up to say Portland is really important in these conversations. Now, let's go through the 4 teams, and then maybe we'll bring up some of the other teams that theoretically can get involved and then go from there. So we can start with the Knicks. You know, Shams reported over the summer that the Knicks tried to do this in the summer. Sam Amick reported earlier today that, like, Karl Towns was apparently hurt by this idea that, like, the Knicks tried to do Giannis. And that's been kind of my problem with a Knicks deal, and to an extent, like, honestly, a Heat deal too. I think it's harder to execute these like massive 3-team deals where there are a ton of moving pieces and you're trying to move guys on your roster than like it is just to put them in the trade machine and go. Because the issue is that if you're doing it that way, right, you're not involving the human beings. And Karl Towns, like, all due respect to him, I'm not, crapping on him, but like seems to be an emotional person in regard to the way he thinks about things and the way that he reacts to things. So involving him in things, if it gets out that he was actually involved in trade rumors, he might react negatively to that. On top of that, you have the Portland thing where I think it's probably not going to be as easy for the Knicks to like just go to Portland and be like, hey, can I have these picks? Like Portland, if I'm Portland, like I want Paulo Banchero, like I might go to Orlando and be like, hey, we have these picks. Do you want to try and get involved in the Giannis sweepstakes? Right? Like if I want Jalen Williams from Oklahoma City, I don't think Oklahoma City wants to get involved in the Giannis sweepstakes, but like I might call Oklahoma City and be like, hey, do you want to get involved in the Giannis sweepstakes? Like we would love Jalen Williams and see what's going on. Not to say that I think Oklahoma City would ever do that. I'm just saying the type of calls that I would be making if I was Portland right now. And the Knicks would be like pretty far down that list to me. So without that, you brought up the idea of like the Knicks having to go out and trade. I would say OG. OG is the one that I think would have the most value of these guys. I think he's just he's the better player between him and McHale. The contracts are not that different anymore. And
after this year, it's 15 this year, and then it closes down to 10 for the rest. And McHale's lasts a year longer.
Yeah. And like Cat, when he's going, is a better player than both of these guys, but like every team needs Anunoby. It does, and he's like super easy to fit into your scheme. Not every team, really needs a Karl Anthony Towns, right? So I think the market's just wider for Anunoby at that point. And look, if they wanted to move OG, like Detroit, for instance, you would offer 3 first-round picks for OG Anunoby, wouldn't you?
I settled on 2. That's a big contract.
2 plus what?
I mean, you have to match this out. So like they'd have to go Tobias plus, like Tobias and Karras would probably get close. And I don't know if it would take a young player, but because I don't want to get into the Detroit side of things, but I think this is important whether it's Detroit or whoever is OG the final piece?
Yeah. What if it was Tobias, Jaden Ivey, and 2 firsts?
I would probably consider that.
You probably do that if you're Detroit, I would argue.
Correct.
So that's the kind of like offer that could lead to, okay, so we're going to Milwaukee now. Hey, we have these 2 first-round picks from Detroit. We have Jaden Ivey.
That's not enough, Sam.
Not enough, right? That's why the Portland picks, I think, are the ones that are really valued, because the Milwaukee picks that Portland owns right now, Milwaukee can control those. They can say, oh no, that's going to become the number 3 overall pick because we're going to tank. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Whereas Detroit, they're not going to be tanking for the next little while. They're a really good team. They have Cade Cunningham. You're giving them OG Anunoby. Jalen Duren might make the All-Star team this year. Probably will. Feels difficult, right? Feels difficult to get real pick value there.
Yeah.
So to me, it's the easiest way for the Knicks is through the Portland side. And I just think that Portland is going to have better options.
So the actual Giannis trade, so like as we game this out, like are we trading Towns as part of the deal? Because that's where I struggled. If you're trading like OG's money to go get draft capital
in a 3-team,
I guess maybe then you don't have to include Towns if it's a 3-team deal. Because like you want to keep you need to keep Towns to play with Giannis, right? Or is the idea that you're moving Towns in a deal? Because I love Giannis, but it's just like whenever you start to think about, okay, how does he actually fit with this team? Obviously, you have 2 of the top 10 players in the NBA, him being one of the top 5 or 3 or whatever people want to say. But I don't love him playing next to Mitchell Robinson in the starting lineup, with Josh Hart obviously also on the court in the starting lineup. You know what I mean? So I feel like you have to keep Karl Anthony Towns in this trade. So then what's all the other money that's going out in any of these deals?
Yeah. So like, if you wanted to do it that way, you could do something like, I'm trying to think of the money here. Like Jeremy Grant isn't quite enough. You could do like Jeremy Grant, Rob Williams, Matisse Thybulle to Milwaukee. You would need to send out a bit of extra money. Like you could send out the Josh Hart deal to Milwaukee, I guess, too. And then send like some expiring money somewhere, I guess, right? Like, or no, like you wouldn't even have to do that. You could just remove Rob Williams, I think. So like Josh Hart, and this is purely financially. I'm not saying like, in terms of value. Josh Hart, Jeremy Grant, Matisse Thybulle to the Bucks, Giannis to the Knicks, OG Anunoby to the Blazers works, right? Okay. So you get to keep McHale, you get to keep Towns, and your team is still very good, right?
So you're
still
starting
4 guys.
Brunson, Deuce, Bridges, Giannis, and Towns.
And you
still have Mitchell Robinson. You just have, okay. All right. That's where I kind of got hung up. I'm like, I'm trading OG. The contract that makes sense here is adding Josh Hart. Well, now I'm trading two of these wings. So the road I went down was actually including Towns in the deal and bringing Miles Turner to New York with Giannis to keep the floor spacing center.
Sure. So here's the problem with the deal I just laid out. It's not enough for Milwaukee. Like, it's just nowhere near enough value-wise.
Yeah.
Like, even if you get all of your picks back,
that's not enough.
To 30,
that's not.
It's just not enough. So like, you basically need teams that will value two of the three assets between Towns, Bridges, and Anunoby, I think is the key. And you can throw Deuce in there too. I mean, Deuce would obviously have like an immense amount of value league wide too. So like, Deuce would return a first round pick easily if you wanted to go out and get another first round pick.
What do you think? So I think the one I made up today was I essentially made the money work. I sent OG to Detroit. And then I sent Turner and Giannis to New York, and then Towns to the Bucks. So for New York, you get to keep Josh Hart. You keep the floor spacing center with Giannis. You get 2 or 3 first round picks from Detroit. Maybe you get Jaden Ivey. Maybe you can scratch away Ron Hall, like whatever. But then my thought was, and again, insert any team for Detroit here. It doesn't have to be Detroit. What could Milwaukee then do? Like with the idea of that Milwaukee then takes Karl Anthony Towns and moves him in his own trade to recoup even more. Like, is that a possibility of something like that? Like you kind of said it with Josh Hart or Deuce McBride. It's all the same idea.
Yeah, look, it's a possibility, but like it's hard to do. You know what I mean? Like, and that's why mid-season, it's just going to be really hard for the Knicks, I think. These are all like kind of off-season-y moves to me. And it's just really difficult, I think, to do these kind of things, mid-flight in the middle of the season. And, I'm not sure that you can do it. Like one thing I was trying to figure out is like, could you do, going to Milwaukee, like Jeremy Grant, Isaiah Joe, Matisse Thybulle to make the money work. And then you send Deuce McBride to the Thunder, and the Thunder maybe give 2 first round picks, like lower end first round picks for Deuce McBride. And then that gives you 2 extra picks that you can send to Milwaukee. Like, I wonder if that's something that they would look at, because that saves Oklahoma City money next year to try and re-sign Hartenstein to try to avoid the tax for an extra year. And then maybe you can move one of Dort or Caruso, because McBride is like a real guy that allows you to play a very similar style. He's been like a little bit worse for me defensively this year, but not that much worse. It's kind of a perfect fit schematically for you. And then, you just kind of like figure out the way to make that work across the board in some way, shape, or form. I don't know. Like, I'm just trying to spitball as many ideas as I humanly possibly can.
The hard part with this too is like in both of these, we've sent Jeremy Grant to the Bucks. And if I'm the Bucks, I'm like, give me another first round pick to take on that multi-year contract as well.
Yeah, it's absolutely true. Like it's 1,000% true that if that's the case, like I want so much money to take him back, because that is what I just have to do. I mean, in theory, you could just send like, I think 2 firsts, 2 of the bad firsts that Oklahoma City owns for Deuce. And like, I think that they have enough, exceptions and things like that to be able to make that work if you're Oklahoma City. But I just bring up Oklahoma City because it's a team that I think Deuce would work with, and they have all of the picks in the world. There are other teams that have all the picks in the world that I'm sure would want Deuce McBride on that contract. The point of this is, though, the Knicks have to involve at least 3, maybe 4, wouldn't blow my mind on 5 in order to do this now. And I just don't know that that's something that works, really.
Well, that's
just like point blank.
I still don't know that we got to the best offer, right? Like, as you mentioned, the Blazers picks alone, the Bucks picks that the Blazers own aren't enough. Like, I realize you want to control your own draft. I get that, Sam. But I would still rather take multiple firsts from somebody else. I think. I don't know. This would be interesting. What would be better? Getting back control of your draft or 4 Warriors picks?
Okay.
I guess there's an argument to controlling your own because you think one of those is going to be better than any of Golden State's.
So like what I just created was basically like, you would need a different player. You'd need to figure out like if you could move, you need to find like a better answer in terms of a young player, I think, going back. But like Josh Hart, Jeremy Grant, Matisse Thybulle to the Bucks, along with all of your own picks back, plus 2 first-rounders from Oklahoma City, Giannis to the Knicks, Deuce McBride to the Thunder, Anunoby to the Blazers. That's like Anunoby for the Blazers picks. It's Deuce McBride for 2 first-round picks. And then it's the Bucks moving. And then like New York is moving they're moving Hart, McBride, Anunoby, and essentially 5 firsts for Giannis.
Two bad firsts, 2 swaps, and your own. That's getting Oklahoma City to agree. Yeah. And that's Milwaukee taking on some real long-term monty as well.
Yeah,
I think that's
I don't think this is enough, to be clear. Like I don't actually think this is enough. But there are ways to make it work. It's just involving 4 and 5 teams, and it's like incredibly complicated.
Yeah.
So, but that's like a way to do it while keeping Towns and while, keeping one of the wings in Mikal and OG, while getting Milwaukee like a high quantity of draft capital. Do they care about that draft capital? Real question. But you're getting a large amount of draft capital back in such a deal. I think a Knicks deal is incredibly hard.
Yeah.
I think one of the reasons the Knicks deal is incredibly hard is that if I'm Portland, I would rather have Jaden McDaniels than anybody that the Knicks have right now. Jaden McDaniels is in the midst of his best offensive season of his career. He's averaging 15 points on 51% from the field, 42% from 3, 85% from the line. He's passing it better. He's making quicker decisions. He's still an awesome defender, and he's 25 years old. Like I'm more interested in that player than I am Anunoby on a deal where I pay him $20 million extra in the final year of that deal. So my idea yesterday was basically, could you send Julius Randle, Naz Reid, and the firsts, like the Portland picks, to Milwaukee, Giannis and Drew Holiday to Minnesota, Jaden McDaniels and Mike Conley to the Blazers? And one thing that I want to talk about real quickly with Milwaukee in regard to just strategy here, right? That we didn't mention at the top. I think from a strategy perspective, the Bucks need to make like a decision here on who's making the choices. Because if I'm John Horst and I am like a selfish individual, I don't care as much about getting picks from 2030 to 2032 when I'm probably not going to get to use those picks. Right? This is where like I think ownership probably needs to be like heavily involved and be like, hey, like this is the best thing for our organization. If we think that a Warriors deal is the best deal for our organization long term because we are immensely valuing the fact that we think Giannis is going to be 35 or whatever in 2029 or 2030, and Steph is going to be older and probably retired by then, and Draymond Green's going to be retired by then, and they're going to have no picks moving forward. And we want to short Joe Lacob as a guy that doesn't really know what we think, or like we think he doesn't know what he's doing, right? Ownership kind of needs to step up and say that now, because I don't know that if I was John Horst, I would be like, well, why am I doing a deal when I'm getting these picks that I'm not going to get to use? And you can say that the case is like, oh, these picks immediately become valuable. You can turn around and flip them, but your team's tanking at that point. Once you move Giannis, what's the point? Right?
Yeah, no, I agree. It is an interesting dynamic for that. I was looking at Minnesota's draft pick situation. No, it is interesting if you're what they're going to value here, because I've wondered about that too. In terms of, I feel like we have yet to send Milwaukee, and I think this is okay, but we've yet to send them any sort of young, interesting talent, right? And I don't think we always have to do that, but if I'm Milwaukee, I'd be interested in that. Like, I wouldn't mind. I don't want somebody like Jaden Ivey. Wouldn't be super interesting to me because he's hitting restricted free agency this summer. But somebody that's a little earlier on their rookie scale deal, or somebody on a really good contract, that's interesting to me. And we've yet to do that, at least with these two teams.
Yeah, I mean, what if you send them Berenger, right? Like you send Berenger in this deal too, where it's Randall, Reed, Berenger, all of your picks back from 28 to 30, and like Terrence Shannon if you want him too, right? Like for Rob Dillingham if you want him, and we send out some money as well. Like the Wolves have some like interesting young players. Like I think Berenger is actually really good. I'm just going to raise my hand. I think Johan Berenger is really good. And I would like want him in a deal. So like, let's say it's, Randall, Reed, Berenger, Terrence Shannon, all of your picks back. The Wolves get Giannis and Drew, and then like some, one of the minimum guys on Milwaukee right now. And then the Blazers get Jaden McDaniels and Mike Conley. And the Blazers basically trade their 28 through 30 draft capital for Jaden McDaniels. Again, I don't know that Jaden McDaniels is good enough to where I'm giving up that draft capital. Maybe it's, the pick and a swap for McDaniels. And then like I give them something else in that deal. Like, is there a chance that the Bucks would want, I don't know, like CD Sissoko or Caleb Love or Young or something? Like I probably wouldn't, but is there a chance of that, right? Like these are the questions that you ask in those circumstances. If you're Portland, like if I'm Portland, I'm probably starting that offer with the first and a swap, and I want to keep one of the Milwaukee swaps.
We're not getting to very much capital going to Milwaukee in this one, though.
Well, they're getting all of their pick capital back. They're getting Berenger and Terrence Shannon. And again, I think Berenger is like a lottery guy. Like I think of him as like a real lottery level asset.
No, I think that's a fair asset. It's just, I feel like we're running into a similar situation.
Yeah.
And I mean, you sent Randall and Reed to Milwaukee. Again, I'm taking on real money, even if I do think that those guys can recoup some value. I'm also, from Minnesota's perspective, I'd be left with Ant, Drew Holiday, Giannis, and Gobert, and Dante.
That's a pretty sick team, Bryce.
It is, but I have no depth behind it.
Yeah, I mean, I might just try and figure out the depth on the fly. Like, that's a sick team, I think. That's a real fun team. You have you have like OKC level defense, and then Giannis is a shot creator, Ant is like an unbelievable shot maker, and you're getting Drew to like run the show, which is what they need, like as a guard, somebody who can run the show. That seems like a pretty immediate top of the West title contender, I think.
That starting lineup is awesome. Like I won't disagree whatsoever. I think, Edwards and Giannis would be really fun together. I don't think, and I don't know if this is the portion where we talk about the stretch big portion of everything. Like that would be a center that we haven't seen Giannis play with a whole lot recently in his career, right? Between Brook Lopez, obviously they made all this, all these moves to get Miles Turner. That would just be very different than what we've seen. Like I do think that that's at least worth bringing up with the Timberwolves.
And I will say this too, like part of the reason, like I think that Bucks fans are probably going to be annoyed to hear this, but like I think that there is a slight, like everybody wants Giannis. Giannis is incredible. Teams think they'll figure it out, right? But because you have to build your roster very specifically around Giannis, it's like a little bit more challenging to create offers that like make sense for the team that's getting Giannis, right? Tim Connolly, I think, would just say, screw it. That guy is aggressive and would just be like, we'll figure it out. I don't know. We figured out Randall and Gobert. We'll figure it out with Giannis and Gobert, right? But I think that like there are other teams that won't be as interested in doing that, I think.
And I think Giannis is probably talented enough. I think Giannis is talented enough that you make those moves. I meant to bring this up with the Knicks as well. I think Jalen Brunson is really good when he plays off the ball. Like I have countless notes throughout the season, but that's a lot more Jalen Brunson off the ball than what Jalen Brunson is used to. And I think it's less with Anthony Edwards if you send him to Minnesota, but there's a little bit more of Ant having to play off the ball. I think it's at least worth bringing up, because if you're making a move for Giannis in season, like we've seen this with Luka in LA, right? Like, and I'm not saying it's 1-to-1, but when you trade for a star, if your team isn't immediately designed to maximize that star, you may not go win a championship in year 1 or even year 2. And so like, that's the only thing I think to consider with some of this is how does he seamlessly fit into your roster? And then are there other options available to make, that move? How does he fit with your best player? Right? Like I would argue he fits better with Anthony Edwards than he does Jalen Brunson. Like that's no knock on Jalen Brunson, but I think him and Ant would figure it out quicker than maybe him and Brunson would figure it out. But I think he fits better, at least offensively, with Karl Anthony Towns than he does Rudy Gobert. With that said, him and Rudy defensively, with Drew still on the perimeter, would be absolutely sick stuff.
Yeah. I think that this is ahead. I think this offer is ahead of the Knicks offer for me. If you're telling me I get Baron J, I get all of my picks back, and I get like Randall and Reed, which allows you to like compete a little bit in the short term, right? Like their 2027 pick is gone. So like they're not, they're not tanking next year. You know what I mean? Like I don't know how they go about that really. I think it might be quite difficult, to be honest. But yeah, like Milwaukee's 2027 pick
in Atlanta,
I believe,
right?
Is with New Orleans. Yeah. So
the most favorable Atlanta goes to the Pelicans, and then the other one to Atlanta. Potentially both to the Pelicans somehow or something. But yeah, they don't have any control over the 2027.
So for next year, you might want to try and be like semi-competitive if you're ownership. You get all of your picks back moving forward. And then maybe you can flip Randall and Reed for like something down the road in the summer of 2027 when Randall's on an expiring deal at that point. And you can use his deal to like try and take back some money and flip for extra assets then, right? And Naz Reid is like a solid player to have, a good player. And you're getting Baron J, who I think is really good, and all of your picks back.
I mean, I think so. The comparison is in both the Knicks and this deal, it was the picks, their picks back. I think really what it comes down to is the value of Baron J versus what you would consider bad draft picks in the first round. I shouldn't say bad draft picks, less than ideal first round picks, right? Whether we do the Detroit one, the Oklahoma City one, or some other random team, whoever.
Yeah.
I think you could make an argument that Baron J and what we've seen so far could be more valuable than. Now, there's always the upside of those picks as well. So I think there's the case there. I think probably what it comes down to is what you would value out of Naz Reid, Julius Randle, and what you think you could eventually flip for them. Like, I think Naz Reid would be a really nice piece on a rebuilding team if he was up for it, right?
I do too.
I think he would be awesome to help develop your young guys. We talk about this all the time with rebuilding teams. You can't trade away all the talent or you get no development and data collection. I think I could keep Julius Randle around till maybe the deadline next year, and then I think I'd be okay trading him. And that's not a shot at Julius Randle. It's not
the 2027 offseason. When in that offseason, he's an expiring deal at that point.
Sure. Yeah.
So I don't know. Like, I think that's not terrible for them. I'm not wildly excited by it by any stretch of the imagination. But you're telling me I get Randall Reed, Baron J, maybe Terrence Shannon, and all of my picks back? It's pretty good. Like, I'm somewhat excited by that. And like next year, when I'm not tanking because I don't have my pick, I get to be semi-competitive. I get to have whatever my rookie is this incoming year. Hopefully I draft a point guard. I get Ryan Rollins. I get Julius Randle. I get Miles Turner, if you want to keep Miles Turner and try and, continue to build. We'll have a conversation about that at the end. I still have Porter. I still have AJ Green. Like, that still might be a playoff team while getting all of my picks back and setting up for the tank down the road. I just wonder if that is more attractive to Milwaukee particularly than a super future facing deal.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, I mean, it's very different avenues, and I would hear out the argument for either. I think for me, I'm going to be more excited about the deals that I think we're going to talk about upcoming that involve more overall draft capital that I'm excited about and potentially young talent that may be even better than a Jan Baron J.
Funny thing is, I don't know if I'm convinced by that, but we'll talk about that in a second. Miami would be next. So my question is, like, can the Heat do this before the offseason? The Heat have to offer, in terms of draft capital, this is. They can't trade their 2026 pick. They can't trade their 2027 pick. I believe they have 2 firsts that they can offer.
30 and 32.
And I believe that it's only 1 swap in 2031 is all that they can offer.
I think they should be able to in 2029. 27 and 28's tied up with Charlotte.
But Bryce, the problem is that they don't, Milwaukee does not own its 2029 pick. So what are you swapping?
Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay, yeah, I got you.
Yeah. So there isn't a swap that exists. You know what I mean?
I got you. Yes, sir.
So it's basically 2 picks and a swap, and then whatever young guys you want. So the best offer to me that Tyler here would be Tyler Hero, Kalel Ware, Jaime Jaquez, Pele Larson, somewhere in that ballpark ish. Kasparis as well. Kasparis is still a guy I'm pretty interested in.
He's interesting. We don't need to get into Kasparis breakdown right now, but I watched them today against Orlando. I was like, oh, okay. It's kind of interesting. I'm in for more of it.
So
this deal does not have a young player that is necessarily more exciting to me than Jan Baron J.
I think and this is going to be a hot take that I'm going to get roasted for by Heat fans or whatever.
Where, I guess most people are going to say where.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I get why Heat fans would say where. He's been much more productive and everything like that. And he has all the tools in the world, and he finished 6th in Rookie of the Year last year. And I have I'm not like anti Kel'el Ware. I think I would bet on Berenjay's like overall movement ability and his motor and his tools a little bit more than I would bet on Ware. And that's just me. If you want to bet I have no problem with you saying that you'd rather have Kel'el Ware. I think that that's probably the more popular assessment right now on the player that you'd rather have. But these guys went like very close in the draft comparatively to one another. Like Ware went 15th, Berenjay went 17th or whatever. Again, like it's not a shot at Kel'el Ware. I just haven't loved the defense anytime I've watched him. And that goes back to both Oregon and Indiana too. So
I also wonder, like, maybe this is unfair. Like, where do things go? You get him out of that Heat organization where we thought was a perfect fit for him because of some of the other concerns. And what does this look like in a tank situation and all of that? I would have to feel very good about my organization, my coach, which, I think that's another thing that probably would need to change once Milwaukee goes down this path. And I assume, I don't know Doc Rivers. I assume he isn't going to want to sign up for this, rebuild or whatever. I would probably take Kel'el Ware, but I don't like if you're ultimately not deciding between one and the other. I guess you are a little bit, but I don't know that I'm so excited about Kel'el Ware that it's just like, oh my gosh, I'm taking the Heat deal over the Timberwolves deal because of Kel'el Ware. I think in general, in a vacuum, I'll take Kel'el Ware, but I don't think it's like the X factor that sways me towards Miami,
So Tyler Hero, Simone Fontecchio, Kel'el Ware, Jaime Jaquez, Kasparis Yakashonis, 2 firsts and a swap from Miami for Giannis and Amir Coffey, or whatever minimum you want to throw in.
No,
I that's the best that I can come up with. No. In the offseason, they have way more picks that they can move. And if for some reason the league decides to give them like relief on the Terry Rozier trade, where Rozier, was involved. We've talked about this before. He was involved allegedly in this sports betting, arrests that have happened in the FBI, and the league cleared him. In Miami's case, I think the league would be, you guys cleared him, so we traded for him. Like, we should get our pick back in this deal, or we should get a pick back in this deal. Like, I would hear out that argument at least. So maybe they think they could get a pick back, and then they have, a bunch of picks to be able to trade for Giannis in the summer. My problem with this is that I think Miami is just basically always going to be semi-competent as an organization.
Yeah.
Because of Miami, because of no state income tax in Florida, because of like every situation. Like, we're going to talk about the Warriors in a second.
Staff.
Yeah, front office and coaching staff is great. Like, we'll talk about the Warriors in a second. Like, all due respect to the Bay, I really have enjoyed my time in San Francisco when I've been there. It's just that like not a lot of NBA guys go there, like unless they are from there. It's not like people have like summer houses there. You know what I mean? They have summer houses in LA. They have summer houses in Miami, like really warm, awesome places, right? If you're from the Bay, it's a different deal. But like the Heat, I think, are always going to have like real inherent advantages that other organizations don't. And that is tricky, I think, to try and manage if you're trying to do a deal with Miami.
That just doesn't sound like nearly enough to me, because this is almost a 1-to-1. It's a little bit more because you're getting 2 firsts and a swap as opposed to 2 swaps and a first. But I would rather have my 2 swaps and a first back than Miami's 2 firsts and a swap. And again, where the young player stuff doesn't swing in a drastic direction here, I just don't like, this is just like, I'm waiting. If this is my best offer, like if this is the best offer I get for whatever reason, I just don't think this would be enough for me to move him right now.
So 2 cases that I've heard otherwise. Well, why can't they go to Portland and get the picks?
With who?
I don't know. Miami. Why can't Miami?
No, I know, but with who? Like, what are they sending Portland for that stuff?
Like, could you send? Is there a chance that Portland would really like Tyler Hero and would give up like a pick for Hero as a scorer, and then would send Drew Holiday back to Miami in order to, pair Drew Holiday and Giannis again, but like, I don't know that I'm doing that because I don't know that I want to pay Tyler Hero like the forthcoming extension that he might be eligible for and seemingly wants. I think Hero would help Portland, by the way, but it's not something I'd be like wildly excited about. Is there a chance that, you could flip them Pele Larson or something like, again, I'm not giving up those picks for Pele Larson or, and then the other case and on top of it, more importantly, I don't know if there's a lot of like positive feeling between the Portland and the Miami front offices after the Damian Lillard saga that occurred before Milwaukee traded for Damian Lillard. So I don't know how much Portland is going to be enthusiastic about helping Miami get Giannis either.
Yeah.
The second one I've heard is, why don't you trade Wiggins to Golden State or to LA and get more picks?
Okay.
In like expiring deals or whatever. I'll hear it out for LA. But like those LA picks are not going to be that valuable, right? Like we've talked about that. Like if you're giving Wiggins to Luka and Austin Reeves and maybe LeBron, you're kind of making them really good at that point, I think, because Wiggins is like the exact player that they need. Maybe it's like a way future facing pick, but that team's still going to have Luka and maybe Austin Reeves is like their centerpieces long term in LA, where people do really like to go. So I don't know that totally works for me either, to go get more assets to be able to send to Milwaukee in a deal.
And so here's the thing I'll bring up yet again, Sam, and this is where I do think it gets tricky. Let's even say you play all of that out. You're running out Davion Mitchell, Norm Powell, Giannis, Bam Adebayo. Who's your starting 3? Jovic. You kept Jovic. You kept Fontecchio.
We kept Fontecchio. No, we had to move Fontecchio. Yeah. We kept Jovic and we kept Pele Larson.
So you start one and you bring one off the bench. And I realize like there's other pieces, and like I'm not trying to be dramatic here. I'm just saying that for these, and listen, in the East, a lot of people may say like, hey, that's good enough to win, right? Like you have Giannis. So obviously I think Norm Powell's awesome. I talked about that recently. I'm not saying it's not. It's just like, man, whenever you're having to make another move to get to the move, you're really diving into your depth and your roster and all of that. And I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm just, and that they shouldn't do it. That's not what I'm saying. It's just like, that makes it a little less exciting. And, I don't know. I just think it's, for some of these teams, this is hard when you have to make the setup move to go make the move.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Final team is the Warriors. I made the case on Monday that I think this is the easiest way to do it. And I think it is the easiest way to do it. And I think if the Bucks only care about picks and young players and everything, I think this is probably the spot that I want to short the most out of these teams, right? Unless if I'm getting my own picks back, great. But like betting against the Warriors from 2029 to 2032 seems like good business to be in to me. Because the Warriors already have a quite old Stephen Curry, they have a quite old Draymond Green, and you'd be sending them a Giannis Antetokounmpo who, like, I love Giannis. I think he's an unbelievable player. I think he's an unbelievable competitor. over his last 6 years, 63 games, 7 years, I'm sorry, 63 games, 61 games, 67 games, 63 games, 73 games, 67 last year. And I'm going to guess it's going to be under 50 this year, at least. It'll be at least under 50 this year. A guy that will deal with injuries. So you're telling me that 3 or 4 years down the road, when Giannis is 34, 35, that's probably not getting better. And it's going to be hard for the Warriors to weaponize ways to work around that. Much in the same way that it's very difficult for the Bucks to weaponize ways to work around that. Right? So I would like to short them. But this is where it comes in, where it's like, okay, is John Horst making the decision when it's 2029 to 2032 is where most of the value is coming? Or is it ownership where they're like, okay, we're willing to take a couple of years off here and rebuild here for the long term. And then hopefully by 2029, we have like a little bit of a core that we have that we like. And then we also have these impending picks coming that might be incredibly valuable. I think from a sheer, just value perspective, if the Warriors are willing to include all 5 of their picks, 3 first rounders and 2 swaps from 2029 to 2032. So 29, 30, 31, 32. So let's say 28, 29, 30, 31, 32. I think that is, along with Pajemski and Kuminga, and then the Bucks send back Kuzma and everything. That's probably the most 1-for-1 value that we've come up with yet. Because I think those picks are going to be quite valuable.
Are you sending out Butler as well, money-wise?
And you're sending out Jimmy Butler to make the money work.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Just want to make sure. And just to be clear, the 2030 pick is, the protections are actually the opposite. They 21 to 30 to the Wizards for the Warriors 2030 first round pick, but they could offer up 1 through 20, which I think is what would be exciting to Milwaukee. Anyway, it would be a little bit weird, but they could, that would be a way around. They could offer 26, 28, 30, 32 and some swaps in between. And they can offer quite a bit because that's protected on the tail end of the first round as opposed to what we usually see with protections, which I think could still be very enticing to the Bucks.
Right. I think that's right. So that's where who's making the decision? Is it ownership? Is it the front office? What's going on? That's what's really important there to me when trying to decide that. Do you agree with me that you think that is the most value that we've probably come up with in a deal so far?
So far, yeah. I think there's other teams that can offer more draft capital. I think there's other teams we could bring up that could offer draft capital and young players.
Yeah.
I think the idea of shorting the Warriors sounds crazy because it's the Warriors, and over the last 10 years, they've been so good. I do think in this trade, you could look at them and go, hey, they're going to be really good for the next couple years. Maybe you extend Curry. What is the plan by 2029 when Giannis is 35, right? Where are they at? How are they building that out so those aren't lottery picks at that point whenever we've taken, that might be an argument for taking some of the the earlier picks is we don't want them to hit a draft. I guess they're going to be super late anyway, but you know what I mean? Maybe we take those ones as well, just to make sure they don't hit on a pick or something. But yeah, I think this is what I asked earlier. Is shorting the Warriors with this amount of draft capital, is that more valuable than getting your own? This is what I need to workshop over the next 24 hours. Yeah. Or is having control of my own draft actually more beneficial to me? Because like you said earlier, I can somewhat guarantee where my pick is going to be. We can sit here and think that shorting the Warriors is a great idea. The same way that 9 months ago, we all thought that shorting the Phoenix Suns was the greatest idea ever. And not necessarily playing out that way right now in 2026. So I do wonder if having your own and control of your own draft, if there is an argument to that still being the most valuable, even though it's only one pick and two swaps.
Yeah. Yeah. It's hard. It's really hard. I think it's really, really tricky. Question for you, Bryce. From 1994-95 to 2011-12.
Okay.
So 2011-12 is the 2012-13 is the second to last Mark Jackson year. How many times do you think the Golden State Warriors made the playoffs?
So that's what?
So it's like a 18-year sample.
5?
Once.
Okay.
They made the playoffs once. It was the We Believe Warriors.
The We Believe. Okay.
Like sick and was really fun. And then for what it's worth, like the next year they missed the playoffs winning 48 games, right? Like, incredibly unlucky. But we are not that far removed from the Warriors pre-Stephen Curry era being a real mess for a long stretch of time. So I just like to remind people of that as we potentially exit the Steph era, and we might get a chance to short a guy in Joe Lacob who has some Jerry Krause in him right now, it feels like, and is trying to, extend the Steph era a little bit, but also make his own like real mark on the team, not with Steph, right? So
I'm just wondering, I don't disagree with you in general that shorting the Warriors in 29 through 32 is a bad idea and lacks value. I guess what I'm trying to hash out is that more valuable than getting back my stuff from Portland? That's all I'm wondering. You know what I mean? Like, it's not that shorting the Warriors has no value. It just doesn't have as much of controlling my own draft capital in those years. And maybe the answer is no. Like, I don't know. If you feel like you can really short them and then you don't have to worry about tanking and you can play at least some competitive basketball, maybe there's an argument for that. I don't know. But I do think it's something that front office is going to have to answer. How much do we want our draft back in our hands? How important is that to us?
Okay, so just a couple teams real quick that we can run through. I just don't think Oklahoma City is going to rock the boat with something like this.
Sure.
Like I just would be very surprised by that. They don't have a reason to do this. They seem very happy building their core from within and having a bunch of guys that really like each other and are ecstatic to like be there. It just feels like an unnecessary risk for them. So they have all the picks in the world. They could do this if they want to. I just don't think they'll want to. Houston is another name I've heard brought up now that they're dealing with some injuries. Like you could, in theory, move like the financially. I believe that you get very close with Fred VanVleet, Steven Adams, and Dorian Finney-Smith. And then like, I think all you'd need is a minimum at that point.
Yeah.
Like it'd be, yeah. So it's 2.3. So you just need to throw in the, I think you could just throw in the Jeff Green deal, or certainly you could throw in the Clint Capella deal and it would work. But the Jeff Green deal works. And that's like this is amazing, Bryce. Fred VanVleet, Steven Adams, Dorian Finney-Smith, Jeff Green versus Giannis Antetokounmpo. How much money do you think those four players make in comparison to Giannis?
Well, based on this, I'm going to guess like 150,000. Like I'm guessing it's right on the nose almost.
They make $259 less.
Incredible.
The Rockets would be adding $259 to their payroll. They also would have to fill out the end of their roster and would have to make like a trade for Capella then out somewhere else just to get off of his money because they're hard capped with the choice to sign Dorian Finney-Smith this year. But like, again, the deal wouldn't totally look like this. Like it would have to be Fred VanVleet and Steven Adams, and then probably instead of Finney Smith and Jeff Green, I mean, I'm asking for Amen Thompson to be clear, but
yeah,
I don't know that Houston would do that. Let's say it's Reed Shepherd and it's Tari Eason instead, right? So it's Fred VanVleet, Steven Adams, Reed Shepherd, Tari Eason, and draft picks for Giannis, right? Or you could try Şengün too, is the other name that you.
No, I don't think I would. I mean, sure. I think Şengün's still plenty young for this all to make sense. Actually, younger than Tari even. But like, this is the team I kept referencing when I'm like, okay, could you kind of split the idea of draft capital? Because they have some years that could be really fun to go get. Like, if I'm not getting back my own, then in 2029, having the two most favorable of Houston, Dallas, Phoenix would be, a decent consolation prize, especially if I'm getting a Reed Shepherd or whoever, right? So that Houston is the team that's interesting to me because they could do a little bit of both and I think they could definitely be offers out there because they have both.
Yeah. They could. It's just like, again, I don't know that they're going to do this. It
Agreed. Sure.
Feel like something that they're going to try and do, but maybe I'm wrong and maybe they'll try something different. Any other teams here that you're looking at and you're like, I guess in theory, Detroit could try to do something like this. They have the assets, but like
it'd be the same idea as Golden State, right? Like their first round picks are just as clean as Golden State's are in terms of like, they don't even have protections out like the 2030. And so you could, the difference is the Pistons young core is 12 years younger than the Warriors young core. And even when Giannis retires, let's say you traded him to Detroit in 2030, Cade Cunningham will be all of 29 or something, and Jalen Duren will be younger and all of that. But yeah, like a Star Thompson and picks or, plus the matching salary. So I don't think this is where Detroit is. To me, Detroit is going to get involved as a third team, like we highlighted earlier, if anything, in some sort of Giannis deal.
The team that I thought of as like a weird sleeping giant kind of idea would be Orlando if they wanted to try and do something with their roster. Like, is there a team that would love Paulo that would give up all of their picks for Paulo, even with the way he's playing right now? And it's been a little bit better recently, but
better recently though. Yep.
Yeah. Like, do you just believe that the injuries, caused some issues early on in the year and then he's rebounding in a way now? He's been like really quite good this week. Like he was awesome against Cleveland and then like really kind of carried them to a win over Miami yesterday. So, I'm still enough of a believer in Paulo. I've always had like some questions, but if there was a team that was like, we will give up 3 first-round picks for Paulo plus like young players, they could then send that to Milwaukee. Or, I guess in theory, like you might be able to try and come up with Milwaukee maybe just wants Paulo. But the other issue with Paulo here is that Paulo's deal is poison pilled right now, which means it would be very tricky to do something right now. Maybe Milwaukee would like work something out with Orlando where they'd be like, we will do Paulo in the offseason if you're willing to do that. But like the poison pill of it is very, very difficult to work through with Paulo from a financial perspective.
I think so. Like, I don't think that this is viable at all. The one, if they thought that he would buy into a long, like the offseason vision, cap space, all of that, like Brooklyn has a ton of draft capital to do it. And then could you sell Giannis on, we're going to use our cap space this offseason to bring in player X to play with you and fill out the roster. And we would have even other draft picks to trade to fill out the roster around you and go get you a floor spacing center, et cetera. It would be a much larger vision that they would have to sell Giannis on. But I've at least thought about that a little bit. Like, it is Brooklyn. I don't know if Giannis would be excited about, or whatever. But if you could get him excited, I think they have all of the assets to quickly turn this thing around, adding him cap space plus the draft capital you would still have after the trade.
Yeah, I'm like trying to think if there's any way that like you can find a way to make this even like feasible with Paulo's poison pill in the season, and I have yet to find it. I would say, I have yet to find it. So, like even if you send Suggs, Paulo, and send Jonathan Isaac to a third team, and then they get Giannis. I mean, I guess in theory that like it could just not be Suggs, and it could be like somebody else. Like it could be Wendell Carter maybe to Milwaukee. I mean, but that like isn't enough sending out from Orlando at that point. I think Orlando, yeah, like this is just not workable until the offseason, I think, with Orlando if they wanted Paulo. But sure. That's like that's a name that I thought of where it's just like, okay, like, is there a team that might be looking for a shakeup in the offseason or now that maybe you could swing something like this, right?
Yep.
Any other teams that you felt like mentioning?
I think the only other two that people would probably yell at is San Antonio and Toronto.
Yeah, I mean, like San Antonio, I don't think is going to do this. I think they want to keep building through their young core. That's kind of been the messaging the whole way there. And then Toronto, sure, if they want to do this, they have the, salary matching with, Pirtle and Barrett, and you keep Quickly, and then you have Ingram and Barnes, but like the Barnes and Giannis fit is kind of strange. Maybe you think that you could make it work, whatever. You throw them Murray Boyles, you throw them Shed, like all of the picks, maybe. But, I think that's even way too hard to finagle. Unless you're sending Barnes, and I don't know that Toronto is going to want to send Barnes in that deal.
Sure. Those were the
if you send
two.
Barnes, it's one thing. But like I don't see them sending Barnes. Would be my guess on that.
My pipe dream is Atlanta because I want Milwaukee to get 2 of the top 3 picks in this draft.
We can talk about Atlanta real quick. Again, I just think they're not going to do this. Like I think that I think that they're not ready for a Giannis deal yet. Like I think that, okay, you have Giannis. Let's say you just have to move Jalen Johnson, right? Let's say it's one of those two things, either the pick or it's Jalen Johnson. Let's say it's Jalen Johnson because it's just easier money wise to do that. You could do, Porzingis and Ricochet and, Onyeka if you want to, but let's just keep it simple and say Jalen Johnson and Porzingis because that's easy. You're then left with Giannis, CJ McCollum, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, Onyeka Okongwu, Ricochet, Dyson Daniels. I don't think that team's good enough to do anything in the East. Maybe next year you get the number 1 overall pick, you get Darren Peterson, maybe that changes, right? But I just think that they're not ready, and I think that this would almost have been more attractive if you still had Trae Young on the roster, but you wanted to get off the Trae Young, deal, which I think was the right decision at the time for them, to be clear. But I think they're going to build long term. Like they have so much flexibility this summer. They have the pick like that. That's the right pathway for them to me.
Yeah. No, it seems like they're in a decent spot. With that, their 2 biggest contracts are coming off the books. Kennard's coming off the books. And, most importantly, they have a pick that could very potentially end up as number 1 pick or, 2, 3, wherever. And we've talked about this. So I always think it's fun to bring up because in a class where we've talked about how good the top of the draft is, a team, what's better for Milwaukee's rebuild than drafting two of Kingston Flemings and Cam Boozer, or whatever combination Keaton Wagler and AJ DeBont, whoever, whatever you want to do. So,
okay, so last one here. What if Philly came and offered you Paul George, VJ Edgecombe, and 1 first rounder? Are you such a fan of VJ that you're like, okay, I'm willing to look at this? And then Doc Rivers could coach the 2 most talented players he's ever coached.
I love it. No, listen. No, Paul George contract. I need more. Like, VJ's awesome, so I understand the idea here, but Paul George's contracts, I'm not signing up for that. I realize that they're like, it's maybe not that bad for Milwaukee because maybe you're not playing the cap space game anyway. I get it. I feel like I would want more than that.
Okay. I think that's an interesting one for me, for what it's worth. If you really buy into, the problem is that I don't know that VJ has shown enough like self creation yet to where I'm like a big buyer, but I'm a big buyer in the human being that is VJ. Like, that dude is a crazy worker and has all the athleticism and is coming from a very high point. I think that's probably an all-star.
I say maybe I'm just lower on the VJ ceiling.
Okay, let's say that you think VJ is an all-star. If you think VJ is an all-star, is that the best deal that we've come up with?
Okay, so I want to change the question. Is that enough to get off of Giannis? Is an all-star enough to get off of Giannis? Like, my answer is no. Like, I think my answer is, and I realize I'm playing the risk game. I would rather take the chance of getting an all NBA player. And the risk of that is, or I guess the reward of getting an all NBA player, with the risk that none of these draft picks pan out. They don't end up as high as I thought. I don't draft correctly, whatever. I think Milwaukee has to go down that path. Now, if you want to tell me that VJ is going to be that guy, and that you believe the percentage outcome of that is maybe higher than what I have right now, I will listen to that. I get it. And VJ's been awesome, but you have to go down the path of that you think gives you the best chance to get the next all NBA player on your roster, whether it's now or 3 years from now.
Yeah. My issue with this is, I don't think VJ is so good as to where you not having any of your draft capital from 2027 until 2030.
How are you building out the roster even if he's awesome, Sam?
Correct. That's my problem with just VJ in a deal.
Yeah.
So I think that there's a real case. Like, do you think Portland would move all of its picks for VJ Edgecombe?
The $3 picks?
Yeah. So what if I told you this? Let's throw in Portland just for fun, right? And this is where we'll finish. And let's just get real silly, because I wonder if this whole thing could get very silly, right?
VJ to Portland.
So Portland definitely gives up all of its picks for VJ, right?
Yeah, I think so.
The 28 to 30. I think they would give those up for VJ. What if I told you that it's Paul George and Scoot Henderson to Milwaukee, along with the 28, 29, and 30 picks that are Milwaukee's,
and then the Philly pick,
VJ to Portland, a Philly pick as well, to like an unprotected first rounder from Philly to Milwaukee, and then Giannis to Philly.
So that kind of gets back into the ones we talked about with, I mean, that's similar to what the Knicks and the Heat did, right? Somewhat. Not quite as good.
Yeah. So you're taking a flyer on Scoot at that point. And,
True.
A former top 3 pick who hasn't played this year because of a hamstring tear. And you get 4 firsts, including all of your picks back.
Yeah.
But again, this goes back to my earlier point about Portland, right?
Yeah.
I think Portland just has better options than the Knicks if they want to go out and do stuff like this. Like, if you're telling me Portland gets VJ for all that, like, that's pretty sick, I think, for them. And that's like that's an amazing flyer for them.
Because Portland doesn't need VJ to be an all NBA player. Like, they're in a different situation than Milwaukee's in, I feel like. Why I think,
that one's fun, right?
It is fun. I find all of these to be fun for Portland. Like, here's my takeaway from an hour and 40 minutes. It's really good to be Portland over the next 5 days. I find myself less excited for some of the other teams involved in all of this.
Including Milwaukee, which sucks for Milwaukee.
I mean, depending on what these teams actually end up coming with, yeah. But I mean, it's very complicated for all the teams trying to get Giannis. Milwaukee has so many different things to hash out. And if I'm Portland, I'm just sitting there feeling pretty good about the names we've thrown out tonight.
I feel kind of good about it too. Okay, Bryce, tell the people where they can find your work. Oh, here, let's stop here.
Yeah.
Make me a prediction. First, does he get traded?
I'm going to say yes, he does get traded. You want me to give you a team?
Give me a team for funsies.
Let's go. I'll say Miami. Even though I know I said I didn't like it, I'll say Miami figures out a way to get it done, and Giannis ends up with the Heat.
I'm going to say yes. It's either Minnesota or Golden State for me.
I'm keeping him in the East, Sam. I'm keeping him in the East.
That, honestly, like, that'd be terrifying if we did that.
Yeah.
But I think that there are more creative avenues than maybe people are thinking here. So that's where I want to like kind of leave this. I think it's a more fluid, creative angle. And again, like, I would not be blown away by them keeping him. I think everyone's acting like this is done. I think there is like a real chance they keep him into the offseason. Is kind of the way I'm operating in making him say no to an extension in like July. You offer the extension in July and say, sign it in October and we're done.
Yeah.
And like play chicken a little bit. I think that's like a versus any singular outcome. I think that is more likely than any singular like trade outcome.
I think the injury also makes that a little bit more feasible because, like, if you're Milwaukee, I think what got lost up until this was that Milwaukee still does have a pick this year, a first round pick. And Giannis being injured for this long allows them, if they do keep him, to still put themselves in position to have a high pick, even if they want to go into the offseason and trade him. It doesn't disrupt the position they're in a year where it looks like, hey, we could actually go get a high draft pick. So I think the injury actually gives them a little bit for holding him through and complicates things from other teams' perspective as well in terms of what they're getting from Giannis this season.
Yeah. Okay. Bryce, tell the people where they can find your work. Tell the people what's going on.
Yeah, at Motor City Hoops on Twitter, on Blue Sky, Motor City Hoops Substack. If your favorite team plays the Pistons, I'll have notes on them as well. I have finally got some contributions over on the Game Theory Substack. I broke down the film of Braden Burries, Arizona freshman from the game Saturday. By the time you're listening to this, I should have a Merez Johnson Jr. breakdown, the big man from Michigan that gets maybe a little bit overlooked because of Ade Mara and Yaxel Lindeborg. Obviously, Sam's doing his thing. The NBA draft show's over there, but I finally got some contributions as well. So make sure you're checking that out along with the Game Theory podcast right here with Sam Vecenie.
Game Theory Sam V over at Substack, gametheorysamv.substack.com. I have done breakdowns on, let's just look this week. AJ DeBanza twice, because I've done the Utah game and the Arizona game. Kingston Flemings, Keaton Wagler. We have the NBA draft show up there. And on top of it, I will have Dalen Swain tomorrow, and Bryce will have Merez Johnson. Just a locked and loaded week. We went over the top this week for you guys over at the Substack. Please go subscribe. It is the best way for you to learn more about these NBA draft prospects. Point blank. There is nothing better. Go to The Athletic. I wrote an NBA draft thing for earlier today. Talked about AJ, talked about Burries, talked about Wagler, talked about Michael Brown and Neo Avdalis. Talked about the NIL landscape for college basketball and NBA draft prospects. So go there, keep it locked there. That's all we got. Until next time, we'll talk soon. Bye.